Good evening and welcome to another edition of the Gersnet Podcast, the independent Rangers podcast by fans for fans, where all the content is absolutely free. Tonight, as always, we are coming to you in association with Forrest Precision Engineering. Now, I'll be your host this evening, Rob Fawcett, and tonight we'll be discussing the latest news both on and off the field at the club, looking back at the game on Wednesday against Kilmarnock, as well as looking forward to the Motherwell game this weekend. But before I introduce my guest, I'd encourage you to visit the Gersnet website. Not only do we have our main website with a host of quality articles and online museum, but it also hosts our popular forums, which are a great place to keep up to date with the latest Rangers news and discussion. Now, again, tonight, as always, we're going to be live on YouTube, and we'd ask that you continue to spread the word amongst your friends and family, share the pod on social media, subscribe to the channel, as well as stop by the forums and join in the chat there too. Now, I need to give another mention to our partners over at Forrest Precision Engineering. They're a Glasgow-based engineering company who have been a big commercial supporter of Rangers for a number of years, and we're delighted to have them supporting the pod. If you want more information about them, please visit their website at www.forestprecisioneng.com. They also have a stunning executive lounge in the Ibrox main stand, and for more information on that, you can email the club at hospitality@rangers.co.uk. Now to introduce my guest for this evening, the Dan Aykroyd to my John Belushi, making us the Gersnet Blues Brothers. Stewart Weir, how are you doing, mate?
I'm a better singer and dancer than you, so that'll be... And a good introduction, that I must admit. One of your better ones, which wouldn't be difficult in itself.
That's it, exactly. You're always full of confidence, Stuart. That's why I love being on a pod with you, mate. How have things been?
I'm honest. Yeah, not too bad, not too bad. Just before we go any further, I have to mention I was at a funeral this afternoon for my erstwhile colleague at the Evening Times, and it wasn't really, it was one that kind of caught us unexpectedly, but Graham Scott is a great wee guy, full of one-liners and fantastic tales, an expert in junior football, and I just like to give him a wee mention just to say, sad to see him go. What a pleasure it was to work with him at the Evening Times all those years ago, and another good guy going.
Well, condolences and thoughts and prayers go to all his friends and family. So I appreciate you bringing that up, Stuart, and I'm sure the rest of the listeners will be saying the same thing. Sorry to hear that. So on to maybe happier thoughts, which is Rangers Football Club at the moment. Before we go into the actual...
thought it? Who'd have thought that?
Exactly. Before we get into the football, obviously it was a fairly interesting week. The boys covered Clement's departure on the flagship, and I guess it rolled in with the appointment of our new manager. I guess before we get into talking about Barry a little bit, what would you have liked to seen done, or who would you have liked to seen take helm until the end of the season, given that Clement was kind of sacked after the St Mirren game? And is it an interim manager that you would have liked to have seen him? Would you like to look at a permanent?
I think this is one where they're going to listen. They've got time. The season is fundamentally over, and all we can play for is 3 points each Saturday until the end of the season and see what happens. You can build the next couple of Old Firm games up into your cup finals, but all in all, you've won nothing this season. And it's a chance to maybe experiment. There will be the due diligence should be done, are being done currently as we speak. I hark back to, and he's not always right, but he was possibly right on this one. When Graham Souness was the one that opted for Frank Lampard and was kind of overruled. Now, people will say, well, look at Frank Lampard, he's only at Coventry City. Well, to be honest, I would think that, Rangers in terms of size and attendances and all the rest of it are far bigger and greater than Coventry. But in terms of the level of football and what he's trying to do there, it's not incomparable. try to get him back onto the straight and narrow, and he's done quite well, relatively well. Again, whether he would have done the same job at Ibrox, who can say? But I would think that this is one that they're going to have to get truly right. This is almost like a Souness appointment in the mid-80s, or a Gerrard appointment when he came on board. They've made so many mistakes along the way in terms of who they've appointed. I don't think Philippe Clement is necessarily a bad manager or a bad man, or he's not very nice or anything like that. I think he turned up to do a job and found it bigger than what he thought it was going to be. I always thought at press conferences there was a bit in me that thought he doesn't quite get the magnitude of this job, and also there were times where it sounded quite like Le Guin. And I know the accents might be comparable or much the same, but it was like Le Guin, I'll just do it my way and tick along, and eventually will come good. Well, drawing games, against teams you should be beaten, and being beaten by teams you should be seen off, shouldn't have been the same conversation as you, is not good enough. And it happened too often. And, there were times he got it right. People say, he was getting it right in Europe. Yeah, he got it right in Europe. And who knows where that route might take Rangers this season. And he got it right on one or two matches. The game against Celtic at New Year, absolutely. But 2 weeks later, they're playing, they're unrecognisable about how they played a fortnight ago. And that just wasn't good enough. The whole thing about losing to Queen's Park in the Scottish Cup was almost like, well, these things can happen and I'm really disappointed. Well, actually, you should be really disappointed because these things do not happen. And ultimately, I think it was warned as well. Patrick Stewart did say in that statement he made that it would still be judged, result-wise, and they had to improve, and they didn't improve. And there's no surprise that he'd gone. The whole thing about Barry Ferguson coming on board, who else are Rangers going to turn to? They could, I would have to say, any appointment would be a left field appointment just now, because there will be people taking a backward step away from the Rangers job because they know how difficult it is, and you have to basically embrace anybody who actually takes a step forward. And Barry Ferguson's the chosen one, if you like. He's brought in a team, and I tweeted earlier on this week, Barry Ferguson's in there. It's takeover, taking care of the team up until the end of the season, and also introducing, as I called it, Rangersness. This is your job. This is the club you play for. Get a grip. This is what's expected of you, and anything else but a certain level of attitude and a certain level of performance ain't going to be good enough. And to be honest, I think we actually saw that in midweek against Kilmarnock.
And it's one of the points I was going to come on to about that as well, because I think I agree with the Clement situation. I think it was probably his inflexibility to try and adjust to his way of wanting his teams to play to Scottish football that's probably killed him in the end. But with the Ferguson appointment, initially there was a lot of criticism around his management record. But for me, because it's an interim role, this is about sorting attitudes out. It isn't about implementing a style of play. It isn't about doing anything like that. This is about looking these guys in the eye and seeing who's got the balls to play for Rangers so that they can weed them out come next season, because we're going to have a fresh slate. The takeover is still in play. They're going to want to bring their own management team in. And I think for getting a core of people back in the club that understand, A, what it means to play for the club, B, what it means to win things for the club, albeit as a player, and the standards that the fans expect the players to show on the pitch, can only be a good thing, in my opinion. And I think listening to him in his presser so far, I've been able to listen to them all the way through again, which is nice, rather than just switch them off when you start listening to,
What
the
Belgian
rubbish.
waffle?
Exactly. But you can see there's a real honesty in him. He's still hugely
Oh
passionate about the
yeah,
club. He, as a player, he treated the rest of Scottish football with contempt, and that's what we need again. We
yeah.
need somebody that's in there as a leader saying, "We're Rangers. We're better than everybody else. It doesn't matter where we are just now. You need to puff your chest out and play with a bit of arrogance."
Somebody in social media put up a show reel at Barry Ferguson, and in all honesty, even though you saw it happening at the time, you'd be hard pushed not to sit and watch it and not be impressed by it. The
Mhm.
goals that he scored, the variation in the goals that he scored, the runs, the long busting runs that he made, 50 yards from the halfway line to get literally a tap in on the goal line. It's a kind of, I know the old thing about guys turn up their medals and saying, "Here, what have you won?" And, again, he might be entitled to do that. But I think if they sat the Rangers players in the cinema room and actually just showed them, this is what I'm expecting from you, I think one or two of them might get a fright as to who this guy that just walked in that they don't know. The guys that he's employed as part of his backup team, Neil McCann has got a real attitude about him. And I say that from not really crossing swords with him, maybe having no disagreement along the way, but he's big enough, man enough to, again, extend his hand, the friendship, the next time he sees you, sort of type thing. But he's a guy that could cut through you really quickly, and knows his stuff. McGregor, almost immediately, what happened in Wednesday night? You had Jack Butland dive into his left. Wow, I mean, when did we last see that? And the whole thing with Billy Dodds, what's he doing in there? Well, I'll tell you, he actually has experience of management that a great many people don't have, that you might be calling upon, and have been accepted into the Rangers fold as an assistant manager, as a coach, and all the rest of it. The other thing is, Billy Dodds was a winner at Rangers. You have to go back and look at who signed Billy Dodds to come in at Rangers. Dick Advocat didn't suffer fools gladly, and the fact that he went and looked for him to come in at Rangers shows you actually he must have been a decent player in his eyes as well, and he scored goals for Rangers and helped the Rangers cause. So it's really, really easy to go through and say, well, he's not any good. Why have you done him? The word that a lot of people are missing is the word that you're used, and everybody's supposed to use it: interim. This is a stopgap measure.
Yeah.
You get from here at the end of the season, and then let's see what happens.
Yeah.
I don't think Barry Ferguson is suddenly going to be only the second manager in the club's history, or one of few to get into a European final and win it. I don't see that.
Yeah.
But you never know what might happen. And again, I think just to generate that kind of level of enthusiasm in the team the other night there, when it was going horribly wrong, it was going terribly wrong, and Barry Ferguson showed real balls and basically giving his you on, and that takes some ball, because again that could have gone even more horribly wrong than it was at the time, but it paid off for him, and I think a lot of Rangers fans, okay, some of them are looking for an open top bus to drive them back to Kilmarnock sort of type thing. But the fact was, there were players there showing an effort and a commitment and a bit more professionalism than they've ever shown this season, or especially under Clement.
Yeah, and I think the bringing the backroom team in that he has done, I think, is really important as well, because, like you say, they've all been winners at Ibrox.
Yeah.
They've all been winners. They know how to travel that road. They know how to deal with the fans and the expectations. And again, it comes back to, it's now up to the players to soak this in for these guys and make themselves ready for next year.
It's amazing. The only people the only people, Rob, that actually know what it's like to play for Rangers are the guys at Celtic, because they undergo the same scrutiny and the same pressure and, the same demands, if you like. And if you speak to guys that have played for Rangers, especially some of the guys, the imported guys or non-Scots sort of type thing, you hear the exact same thing across the city for the guys that have played there. There is a pressure and how can you put it, an expectation level that might be wholly unrealistic. It probably is unrealistic with this current team and this current crop of players. People are still celebrating guys doing this and doing that. Well, to be honest, that's your day job. You should be quite good at that. And in the whole pantheon, the whole scheme of things, you're not as good as others that have done it previously. But, everybody's kind of stuck with you just now. And you need to do your level best to improve the situation. So I'm still interested on people's attitudes or views as to who Rangers could have turned to. There are managers out there and very capable managers. But can you imagine, for instance, if you'd gone and said, right, who about here is available? Oh, there's such and such who was at this club or that club. First thing that would be said was, well, he didn't win anything. Nothing to do with his coaching credentials or his capabilities or what he did. So you're fishing in a very shallow pool. And I wasn't really surprised that Barry Ferguson got a gig, simply because he's also somebody who the board will be thinking can reconnect with the fans and is a bit of a, can gel with the fans, know what they're talking about. He was a hero. I mean, he's taking a big risk on his own. They say never go back. I mean, his legendary status is under real threat if he doesn't get it right, even in a short period, even if you use the word interim. So he's put his neck in the line as well, and well done to him.
No, absolutely, mate. And I think I've actually been, as I say, I've been really impressed just listening to him. Now, we've obviously only had 90 minutes of football under the stewardship so far, but I definitely think had we still had Clement in charge, there was no way we would have came back for that game, and we'll touch on it in a wee bit later. But I also think with all the takeover talk hanging over us, you're absolutely right. I don't think there was many people that would have put their hat in the ring at a job at Rangers for 3 months as an interim manager with all that going on. But I think as we look forward, when the takeover does go through and the probably 99% going to be a new management team coming in, I think it's really important for us to make sure that we've got people like Barry, McGregor, McCann, etc., to be part of the club going forward, because I think we've lost a lot of people in the background that knew Rangers, that knew the standards, that were about the players on a day-to-day basis. And I think sometimes we overlook how important some of those roles are. They're maybe not directly involved in the day-to-day management or interaction with players, but being seen around the club and reminding these players that a good performance doesn't make you a fucking superstar like Jimmy Bell would do to players. I think we've got to keep that identity in the club regardless of what happens with the management team, and it's so important for our success, I think, that we have that Rangers DNA. And I know it can be overlooked sometimes and overstated, but I think that's one of the things that we've desperately missed over the last few years.
Managers that have succeeded at Rangers, and one in particular, Dick Advocaat's closest ally was John Gregg. Advocaat would turn up at a press conference and Greggy would be there. Advocaat would at times wouldn't do anything or say anything until he spoke to John Gregg, because he wanted to tap into the guy with the most experience who's available to him. Now, John Gregg won things at Rangers as a manager. Didn't win the league title, but he had cup success and some decent performances in Europe as well. he knew what the pressure was to be the Rangers manager. He's also iconic in terms of what he did as a Rangers player and a Rangers captain, you know. And when I say Rangers captain, I mean his demeanour, his presence, his stature around the club when being the Rangers captain meant something. And that, whether that was picking up a trophy or a league title, or sadly having to attend funerals of fans that were lost in the Ibrox disaster, he could carry that off. But Dick Advocaat used to sit down with John Gregg and discuss all of these things. So Advocaat educated himself. And, you know, and I think what you're saying is right. You need somebody there, or you need a presence there of somebody that's been at the club, knows what it's about, and that any new manager can come in and tap into.
Absolutely. And I guess that brings us on to some of the news that came out over the last week as well around the takeover, which is looking kind of more and more positive now. Certainly, you know, a few of the other kind of fan media outlets who are close to the club making really positive noises. I think there's probably going to be a group of shareholders, including Dave King, who are ready to sell up to give this 49ers group a controlling stake in the club.
49 Gers.
49 Gers, yeah, 49 Gers, there we go.
No 49ers, 49
I would
Gers.
say they should be 51%, 51 Gers then if they're getting 51%. We need to change the name.
No, I think it started with 51%. I'm going to take it up to 69%, is it? No,
okay.
But buy everybody out.
But given if it does go through, we're going to have backers that will have serious cash available, which means that hopefully we can see the type of investment in the club that we've probably been crying out for. Hopefully, investment that is made in the right manner and utilised in the right way by whatever the management team is going to be. It's also going to help her raise her profile again. Is this a situation where this is going to be a really good thing for Rangers, or are we kind of worried about what the future looks like given some of our past experiences with investors that have come in?
It cannot be a bad thing given where the club is just now. That's the bottom line. And I know people look at the past. To my mind, a lot of investors weren't the right sort of investors. It was Rangers almost went back at one point in time to the chairman who owned the butchers in the town. You know, the sort of a model that dated back to the 50s or 60s, let's say, which wasn't a good look, and obviously was proven to be unsuccessful. The thing about the Americans coming in, the Americans will do two things. One, they'll bring a bit of cash with them, but two, they also have an understanding of maybe not soccer, but they have an understanding of sports business and how you capitalize on success, how you capitalize on a name and on a brand and all the rest of it. I know there's a great many people saying this is fantastic news. Look, it's almost there, it's almost done. I do wonder where this will actually lead to, because if you invest the amount of money they're going to have to invest first to buy everybody out, and then to get the players in that they're desperately going to need to make a success of it, Scotland isn't the place to be playing football. And there just is not the money there to basically give you a dividend on what you're trying to achieve. Now, the other thing I would say is the Rangers fans really know who is coming into their club. They've had success in American football and all the rest of it. Yeah, but if you look at other American successes in American football and all the rest of it, they've come into clubs and basically bled the place dry because they've almost asset stripped. And what profits were there, they never put back into the club. Exhibit A, Manchester United. And look where they are. And they've got a far better base, if you like, than what Rangers have got. And also, where are they aiming to take the club? Oh, into Europe for European success. Really? These people are all based on like franchise models. And as I joked the other day there, but it was actually sort of semi-serious about it. This might be me getting my exclusive on the Atlantic League of 1994. I might actually get it right, sort of 30 odd years on, because to make real money, you have to be playing in a competition that's going to guarantee it. The SPFL doesn't guarantee that kind of money in any way, shape, or form. And people will say, oh, well, they should get a better television deal. Really? With what is on show in Scotland? I watched a game the other night there, or last week. The St Johnstone game was on. St Johnstone Heart. Was it St Johnstone Hearts? Aye. Easily forgettable. Anyway, but it was like St Johnstone, was it holds 10,000? You'd be lucky if there was about 5,000 there. Is that really going to generate cash and funds and money and bring it into Scottish football? No. So I just wonder what their long game is going to be if and when they do come in. I get back to the old Rupert Murdoch line that the signing of a contract is the beginning of negotiations, and I do wonder what will come after they actually tie up to Rangers, if they do tie up to Rangers.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think echo similar thoughts to yourself, Stuart, but I think the evidence certainly with the 49ers stuff at the moment is the investment they've got in Leeds, and the way that they've kind of run that club, I think, so far. Obviously, Leeds are having a good season at the moment, sitting top of the Championship, 5 points clear.
I don't disagree, but just to reiterate what I'm saying, Leeds United win promotion, go into the top flight in England, and then get relegated instantly. They walk away with 90 million quid.
Aye. Uh-huh.
How many years in the Champions League did Rangers have to play to make 90 million quid? And that is where the two models differ so much. Yeah. And I know people say, oh, you're being pessimistic. I'm just trying to work a lot of this out in my head. It's dead easy to welcome people on board, and it's almost like any enemy of my enemy suddenly becomes my friend. No, it doesn't. It doesn't work that way. That's dangerous territory. And I think there has to be a sort of long-term view of what might happen rather than what will happen in the short term.
Absolutely. I think, as you say, the only other thing that we've got going for us is that global fan base. The fact that we will regularly be in European football, but like you say, the payoff from a return on that is going to be a much longer term thing. So it'll be interesting.
One more point on the Americans. What happens if they say, yeah, we're now the biggest shareholders, we want to decide who the manager is? Welcome Bruce Arena, or welcome Claudio Reyna. What are the Rangers fans going to do then? Claudio Reyna, oh, he's fantastic. Is he any better than Barry Ferguson? How do you know? Always be careful for what you wish for.
As long as we get the superstar quarterback in the first round draft, then we'll be all right. So moving on to the Killie game, mate. It was really interesting to see Ferguson stick with the exact same team that was beaten convincingly by St Mirren. Were you surprised as probably the majority of the fans that I spoke to?
No.
Because
I think there has to be a realisation of how threadbare Rangers are for players.
Yeah.
And I think there might be one or two, and again, they've only looked at them maybe once in training, but there might be a quick consensus of, I can suddenly see why Philippe Clement wouldn't play that guy.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know what's happening those 24 hours. It was pretty chaotic. Another thing is, to come in and start making wholesale changes, you don't really know what that squad is. So pick the same guys out the last time and just give them a rocket. Give them a rocket before they go, and they're bound to be better than what they were in the previous game.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it was really interesting listening, and we'll touch on the presser today a wee bit, but Balogun, Suter, Sterling all back in training magically today. Whether that's just timing or there's a coincidence with the new manager coming in, I don't know. But at least it looks like, well, we'll start to get some of those bodies back, which is good
I can always hear Barry going into the physio's room and going, "And what's wrong with you?" You know what I mean? It just that's a wee pep talk, just to get the guys motivated.
That's it. Absolutely. Now we need to talk about the first kind of 15 minutes to half an hour. First of all, unfortunately, just to get the fucking negatives out the way. And I guess the story of the season continued with the first goal, where we conceded another fair set play. For me, Proper just sits down in his arse for some reason. Our centre halves were getting bullied at every set play by the Killie players. It's not exactly the reaction that we were hoping to see for the St Mirren game, was it?
He actually tipped over his own player, actually. That's why he ended up on his backside. I don't think that. Listen, when Walter Smith came back into Rangers, the first two major signings he made within a fortnight, was David Weir and Ugo Ehiogu, right? Why? Because he needed two centre backs that weren't going to mess about and were going to get a job done. Guys of experience, guys that could manage themselves on the pitch, whilst Walter Smith and and McCoy had a chance to actually watch what was happening elsewhere. If you don't need to worry about the goalkeeper and the centre backs, you'd be amazed at how little managers actually have to do. It's the rest of the team almost takes care of itself. That's where you take your strength from. That's where you take your direction from. Okay, you may have the midfield players that can do all sort of different things, and wingers and guys that score goals, but unless you get that defensive, trio right, you're on to plums. Go back to Souness. You go back to Souness. Who's the first guys he brings in? Woods and Butcher, and then adds Graham Roberts to the mix as well. So managers identify that as a core area. Barry Ferguson has nowhere to go. Mm-hmm. The January window was tossed away because Rangers did not take a decision on the manager simply because, well, he's got a European game, and this was not the right time to do it. Yes, it was the right time, because you're not going to improve the team in February, March, April, other than the players that you've actually got get better or a bit more confidence. If you want new faces, you've got to have done that in January, and that didn't happen.
Nice.
And the other thing is, you've got, without the likes of Balogun's the one, why he was ever allowed to leave in the first place, I will never know. He's a dependable guy. But if you're not playing with your first choice centre backs and you're throwing anybody into that position, then you really need one of them to step up and say, I'm in charge here. I remember being at dinner with Sir David Murray and talking about different things. And at the time he said, the biggest thing for me is to get Danny Wilson and Bagheera sold. I'm like, what? He went, he says, because if David Weir retires, people will see actually how good they are. Because David Weir was a masterclass with these guys. Every time they were in a game, he was coaching them side by side. What balls he would go for, what balls they would go for, where they should go at corners, who they should pick up, and all the rest of it. It was a coaching session from a top professional and a good centre half. Rangers don't have that just now, and and you're really getting into games on a bit of a wing and a prayer. You might actually, Rangers might score goals, but not conceding them is the real issue. In the first 15 minutes the other night, there you saw for yourself the pitfalls of a team that are trying to maybe do too much. Kick the ball the way you're facing sometimes, because at least you know where it's going to go, rather than fancy spin turns and layoffs and all the rest. No, just do the basics. And funnily enough, Rangers did do the basics. After they get back into the game, after half-time, if you watched that Rangers team, they did some things that were just fundamentals. don't be fancy, clear your lines, put the ball down the pitch, and put the pressure on Kilmarnock and see what happens. And Kilmarnock cracked.
Aye, absolutely, and that kind of holds up with the second goal as well, because there's the mix up between Raskinen and Ciala. It's a great finish by Lions, don't get me wrong, but he should never have been given the opportunity to break through to get that. I was screaming at the telly at this point, because it was like every attack that Kilmarnock had, you were like, are they going to fucking score again? And it was probably like that for the first 25, 30 minutes until Barry made the decision.
And you also had it, Barry Ferguson, 2-0 down. We knew this was going to happen. When has this ever happened to a Rangers manager? I'll tell you, when Dick Advocate took over and they were 3-0 down to Shelbourne. How is it to forget that? It's only because Rangers at that time had the Harlem Globetrotters all-star team running about them, that they actually get out of that one. But so it does happen. And at that time, that Rangers team was a new squad and all the rest of it, and were finding their feet. But there's enough about them in terms of their quality to actually win that game. This current team doesn't have that quality, and they certainly don't have the confidence. So to come back from 2 goals down and win that game was pretty remarkable, I have to say.
I know it was a good statement of intent, I think, and for me, I'll touch on Ciala a wee bit, because I think we need to remember, I mean, he's only played probably 8 or 9 full first team games in men's football, and I think he's shown up quite well in some of them. He's used to the ball. I think he's a really good passer at the football, but the last couple of games are where his inexperience and his lack of physicality have been shown up, and while the decision to bring him off was harsh on him as an individual, it was absolutely the right decision to do at that point in time, because it showed the defence up, and Tav moving into centre halfway proper kind of made us a bit calmer. But I guess, do you think Ciala will use this in the right way to kick on and take the learning from it?
I hope so. Put it this way, he's not the first to be hooked, because he's not playing well, and he's not the first to be hooked regardless of age either. It was a brave thing for Barry Ferguson to do. And I do hope that when he was going round all the other guys that pulled Rangers out of hole and got them the win and giving them putting an arm around about them, I do hope he did the same to the boy after the game or in training the next day, saying, the easiest line for Barry Ferguson to come out was, I took you off for your own good. And if the boy doesn't appreciate that, then maybe he shouldn't be in professional football. But he has been fed to the wolves ever so slightly, because it's like, let's go around, what centre backs have we got? Oh, we've got you, and we'll put you next to the guy who doesn't know if it's New York New Year sometimes. Okay? And the point, I go back to what I referenced earlier on there, Davy Weir playing with the likes of Bagheera and playing with the likes of Wilson at that particular time, and making them look like superstars. That you just don't have that dynamic just now at Rangers, because the guy who is the senior partner is too busy running about having bomb scares everywhere.
Aye, absolutely. And we'll jump forward a wee bit. Obviously, we did get back in the game in the first half when Ridvan plays up a nice ball to Egerman, and he gets brought down. Actually, a good bit of refereeing for a change, the advantage being played, and allowing Deal to break and kind of play in Cherny, who got us back into it. But I want to focus on Big CD9, our favourite player in the Rangers team, Big Dessers.
Yeah.
Because I think this probably summed up all that is. This game summed up all that is frustrating with Mr. Dessers, because he misses a great, glorious chance for 4 yards out and doesn't bust the net, but then he gets his level for a great set piece for a change with a good header.
Actually, sorry, just on that set piece before you go any further, or I forget what I was going to say. It was almost like Kilmarnock went, it's only Dessers, just leave him. just chase the bodies that are moving, because they're dangerous. Just leave him there. And all of a sudden he goes, the header, I'll just go down on my knee and I've scored. I mean, it was almost like by accident he scored that goal. It was typical of him. And I know I was half waiting on social media and the likes for somebody to come back and me. I see what you said about Dessers. Sorry, you're out the Scottish Cup because he missed a couple of sitters. He didn't beat St Mirren. Before they scored their second goal, he missed a sitter there as well.
Mm-hmm.
Don't suddenly because he scores 2 goals against Kilmarnock because he's got a new manager and telling him or Billy Dodds chipping in his ear all the time. Don't tell me he's suddenly become Gabriel Batistuta #2. He's not. I'll say comprehensively here, Rangers are not going to win a title with him as your #1 striker.
Well, absolutely not, mate. And I think the argument for me, because I was going to touch on the second goal, the ball through Fioradvan, because that was a cracking side foot finish. But he did score. He scored 22 goals last year. He's now sitting on 20. I think as a #9, a main #9, he ain't your guy. But for me, I love his attitude. He doesn't let the criticism that he gets for the fans get to him. He continually puts himself in the position. And I think as a squad player, he's a really good person to have round there. He'll contribute goals. And to be honest, at this moment in time, I'd probably much rather have him as a backup 9 than Danilo, given Danilo's injury record, because at least Dessers is available for most of the games.
Somebody comes in during the summer and offers you 3 million for Dessers, you take it.
Absolutely, given his age.
Yeah. No further questions, Your Honour. Listen, he scored okay. He scored goals. I still go back when Rangers really needed him to score the goals. He hasn't scored them. And the definition for me of a goal scorer is the guy that scores the goal either when you least expect it or when you're so desperate for it, and he's the guy that comes up. Hence the reason why McCoist was so good. Hence the reason why other strikers became, legends, if you like, because they turned up and scored goals when they were most needed. Dessers hasn't done that. He scored 19 goals. He scored 20 goals. Brilliant. If he'd taken half the chances, he would have scored 40. And I know that's an argument that could be levelled against any striker. McCoist is sitting in 355. If he'd taken all the chances, he'd have been about 1,200, to be honest. And it doesn't work that way. But I still think when the key games come around, I was thinking to myself, Dessers is kind of unfortunate. When you see some of the players that Rangers have had previously wearing the #9 shirt and how guaranteed they were to score goals, and also how damn good they were at scoring goals. I don't think it's a simple sort of question. Jelavic goes from Rangers to Everton and still scores goals. He had one of the first, amazing percentages of first touch finishes of anybody in English football at that time. Could Dessers go from Rangers into that Everton team? No. So it's like you're comparing apples and onions, really. And all right, he's a nice guy and he scores goal and he's got a great attitude, absolutely brilliant. But does he do it? He doesn't do what he should do. He doesn't do what he says in the tin, and that's what he is just one of the problems, issues that Rangers have. They've got too many players like him in too many key positions, and it's going to take some real dosh to cure that situation and some real scouting of the highest order.
Aye, absolutely, mate. And I guess top it off, we did get a fourth, which was good. I think it's probably one of the better games that I've seen Diamandi play over the last few months. To be honest, 2 assists. This was a lovely wee pass over to Barami to stick it through the keeper's legs and take a lucky bounce into the back of the net. I think it was interesting to see the clip. Obviously, a Barry
Ferguson,
and he obviously sees something in Dio and wants to get more out of him. But if he continues in that vein of form, he could start to show us some of the promise that we heard about when he first joined.
Yeah, or somebody's clipped up that Kilmarnock game and is trying to flog them just now. You know what I mean? It's like where Rangers are just now holding players that have got any value at all. Could be another part of this scenario that nobody's really paying much attention to. Everybody's looking at the takeover. No, this will happen. But equally, Rangers could be asset stripped by other clubs that have seen one or two players in there that look pretty damn good. Ridvan, for instance, how many rumours has there been about him? He comes off the bench, goes into the team, and looks one of the better players again. How many times has that happened?
Mm-hmm.
So these are interesting, even puzzling times for Rangers, and it's going to be interesting over the piece over the next 4 months, just to see where they find themselves on the pitch, and just to see where they find themselves off the pitch in the business world as well, whether it's through takeovers or transfers.
And just the last point before we move on to the Motherwell game, I think apart from the first 30 minutes, obviously, I was quite impressed by the team. I think that the one thing that shone was actually our willingness to try and break the lines for a change and pass forward rather than the defender out wide, kind of side to side that we've seen for the last few months. You know, if this is a sign of the more aggressive Rangers that Barry's talking about, and he can continue to implement that over the next few weeks and few games, it should make it an interesting couple of months under him.
I've never been able to follow the logic of being a midfield player where if you're sitting in the stand and you see where an opening is, why don't you run? Because if you run to that opening, somebody will try and close you down. If they try and close you down, it means they're not watching somebody else, which means you can get a pass away. You do not hurt anybody passing round in the infamous horseshoe. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
And all this garbage about stats, possession stats. I mean, honestly, they should have made the possession stats from Manchester City and Liverpool into a baseball bat so you could hit people with it. It's like, doesn't matter, 68% possession. If you don't do anything in front of goal, 68%, it's not like you get ice skating or gymnastics where somebody comes out and gives you, pulls the wee boards up. We get 6.8 there for artistic impression. Doesn't work that way in football. You need to put the ball in the net. And just the fact that Rangers were going forward, and as you say, showing a bit of commitment and a bit of determination and a bit of belief and an abundance of energy that we've not seen previously this season, that's what made the difference.
Absolutely. And then man of the match, just before we go on to Motherwell, who would you?
The Kilmarnock game. No, I'm not saying Dessers. I actually thought Diamandi actually had a good game.
No.
Given he had the responsibility. And the reason he had a good game, and I know you saw the wee clip with Barry Ferguson saying that to him, that's what he wanted and all the rest of it. If there's one position in the pitch that Barry Ferguson understands, it's that position, that midfield position, whether it's in defence, whether it's making tackles, whether it's breaking play up, whether it's spreading play about, and he knows what it's about. And I think, it might have taken a while, but actually Rangers might find themselves now with a kind of a midfield 3 or 2 or 3 that actually is what you base your team on between now and the end of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. And going into the Motherwell game, again, like I said earlier, I think it's the first time I've listened to the full presser for a while, and I think there was some good news about the likes of Suter, Balogun, Sterling being back in training. Hopefully Cortez has been training for the week and he might be back in the squad. How do you think we're going to line up against Motherwell tomorrow? Do you think it's going to be more of the same, or do you think if the likes of Suter or Balogun haven't got any chance of playing 60 minutes or so, they'll be in the starting lineup along with Proper?
They might as well take the gamble on getting 60 minutes at them, even if they break down again, because you could wait 3 weeks and then break down. Do you know what I mean? I think the point you made earlier there, really interesting. All of a sudden, I don't have any sore bits anymore. I don't need a cortisone injection. Take these crutches away from me and cut this plaster off. I'm fit to play. This mindset, I think one or two of them were I'm not saying they were doing it deliberately, but it was easier sometimes to sit there and not take any flack or not take any pressure by not playing than it was to come back into that team and suddenly find yourself exposed to the criticism that a lot of the rest of them were. So it might be now the attitude is, I need to be playing in this team. If I'm not going to stay here, I need to be playing in this team. Because even if Barry Ferguson goes out the door at the end of the season, other people might be watching what my contribution has been.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And he spoke again in the presser about a more aggressive Rangers. So do you think we're going to see that from the start tomorrow, hopefully, that will actually get in Motherwell's faces for a change and not be as passive as we seem to have been over the last few home games?
The only thing I would say is in the aggression and in taking the game to Motherwell, you leave yourself exposed. And I still don't think that Rangers defence is doing what it should do. It's not like you're along that sort of back line and you've got, Gary Stevens and Goff and Butcher and whoever, or there's John Brown and Davy Robertson and or Hutton and David Weir. There is none of those kind of names or guys that you would say, he'd be a first pick. You're patching up that defence. There's different guys playing in different positions because of injuries and all the rest of it. You don't have anybody else. And I just sometimes think that if Rangers get put under pressure, they might, in fact, I'm saying might, they probably would concede the goals that we've seen all season. So it's fine being brave, it's fine being bold, it's fine taking the game to Motherwell, but be aware that if they hit you in the break, they might do more damage to you than you have done at the other end.
It might well be we need to adopt the attitude of we'll score one more than you, which will make for some entertaining games between now and the end of the season, but I don't think it'll do the tickers any good.
I'm looking forward to Rangers 7, Motherwell 4. I'd be quite in fact, I'll just put a fiver on that whilst we're sitting here.
Absolutely.
You're not going to win games by playing in the manner in which Rangers have played under several recently departed managers. The kind of damage limitation approach, the sort of pragmatic approach doesn't work because teams just sit back there. I said before, why have Rangers been successful in Europe? I said it the other week there in TalkSport, because teams open up, teams give you a chance. And if you score a couple of goals more than them, there's a fair chance you're going to win the game. But it doesn't happen in Scottish football. And again, it'll be interesting now. Kilmarnock was a different scenario, totally different scenario, different build up to the game, different dynamic as far as that went. Back to Rangers, you're back to Stodge, you're back to Tatties and Mince. You're back to a team turning up there and coming to Rangers and playing with two banks of probably 4 and 5 or 3 and 6 or whatever the formation is that they'll play. They ain't going to change very much from that to frustrate Rangers and then hitting the break. And Motherwell get some decent players and they can do that. And also they've got a manager, a new manager, and it's what better way to make a name for yourself than beat Rangers at Ibrox again?
Absolutely. And I guess the other big thing about tomorrow is one of our favourite players to have. It makes it 500 games for the club. Now, obviously, he is a player that continually splits opinion, but I don't think there's any doubt in his commitment to the club. And you kind of remove the trophy element, from the player. I think the numbers he's put up for the club as a right back, we need to celebrate that because he has been a good player for Rangers over the years. He was pivotal in a run to that Europa League final. I think one of the interesting things is Barry's given him his full back and his captain at the moment, and he's spoken of the need for the captain to be a leader on the pitch, which I think is something that we've all really wanted to see for Tav when he was given the armband. And I think there was a bit of a change in him on Wednesday night where he seemed to be a bit more vocal. Do you think that with Barry being manager now, that'll help Tav? Because Barry will probably be pushing him to be a bit more in people's faces and to be a bit more vocal and to be that leader on the pitch that he used to be.
Yeah, but also Barry Ferguson will know that if he took Tavernier out of that team, one, you've got to find somebody to play in that position. Or if you take a captaincy off him and you still play him, is he actually got to do a job for? I think sort of second guessing maybe what's happened is you don't change the team, you just let it be, and then you heap the pressure on Tavernier to produce the type of performances that you would expect your captain to make. You can't do that if you don't pick him. Once you pick him, then the pressure's almost applied instantly because there's a new management group there, and the fans as well will be looking at it shouting, "You're the captain."
Mm-hmm.
You know, the criticism won't go direct to Barry Ferguson. It would be turned back on Tavernier simply because he is the captain. The new guy's giving you his blessing, his confidence, his, sort of stamp of approval. It's up to you to do it. And if you don't do it, maybe you're not capable of it.
No, absolutely. It'll be interesting to see how it goes tomorrow and to see whether it's marked with anything from the fans or the club. But it's a great milestone regardless of how you feel about him as a player and as a captain. And I think it's something that we need to celebrate because there's not many players that will get 500 appearances for this club.
Well, and to counter that, there are probably players in the last 10 years who will get 500 appearances simply because there haven't been anybody else. And this is what you get for good attendance.
Score predictions, well, I think you've already said you're going to be sticking a fiver on 7-4, was it?
So, I think it was a bit rash there. I think I'll go 1-0 again.
Oh, brilliant. Well, I might just stick a fiver on 7-4. If it comes up, mate, I'll split it with you, right? So there we go. You've heard it here.
I've heard it. I'm going to record this and then going to laminate it and put it in shop windows everywhere. If this man comes in with £1 to get a bet on 7-4, take it off him.
Oh, brilliant! Well,
I'm on halfers.
Well, I just want to say a big thank you, Stewart, for being the guest tonight. As always, it was an absolute pleasure. Hopefully you've enjoyed it and you can have a good weekend watching the game tomorrow.
I'll be watching several games. That's what I do.
And as well as being live tonight on YouTube, folks, the show will be available on all podcasting platforms. That's your iTunes, Spotify, Acast, Stitcher, etc. as well in the coming days. I'll be back on hosting duties on Sunday for the flagship at 9:30. We'll be reviewing the Motherwell game and looking ahead to the big game midweek against Fenerbahce. Alan Rogers is going to join me for that, assuming Frankie doesn't send me for going 15 minutes over. All that's left for me to say is a massive, massive thank you to all those watching live on YouTube and to everybody that's listening again on one of the podcast locations. Cheers for now and have a good weekend.